With Marty Bureau. Marty, here's an observation I've made. Nothing seems to come easy for this Maple Leafs team.
The Toronto Maple Leafs were not dealing with one bad night or one missing player. The problems were deeper. Defensive numbers told the story. Injuries added weight. Then the general manager broke his silence. He did not shift blame. He did not promise quick fixes. What he admitted placed the entire season under a harsher light.
We're not where we want to be or where we envision to be. Obviously, we've underperformed to this point, and I take full responsibility. I'm in charge of the hockey department. I've put the people in place on the ice, off the ice, so the responsibility lies with myself, and we start today and every day trying to get ourselves back up and going and improve where we are.
The focus moved sharply to Brad Treliving after the Toronto Maple Leafs continued to struggle through the early portion of the season. During a media availability, the general manager addressed the team's performance directly. He stated, "We've underperformed to this point." That statement placed responsibility at the top of the organization, not on individual players or coaching staff, and it marked one of the clearest acknowledgments from the front office this season. Treliving expanded on that position by stating, "I'm in charge of the hockey department. I've put the people in place on the ice, off the ice, so the responsibility lies with myself." The comment removed ambiguity about where accountability rests. At the time of those remarks, the Maple Leafs held an 8-9-2 record. They ranked second last in the Eastern Conference. The team had also allowed the second most goals per game in the league.
Brad Treliving, the general manager, had his media availability at about the quarter mark of the season, and things are not going well in Toronto right now when you look at the hockey club. And Noodles, one of the quotes that really stood out, there was a lot of great quotes that I want to talk about with you about Brad Treliving. One of them was, "There's too much vanilla with our hockey team right now." And when I think of Brad Treliving talking about we need a new DNA, and right now he's saying there's too much vanilla, I mean, this is a pretty significant message to the players.
Attention then shifted to the team's identity. Treliving described the Maple Leafs on-ice product as too much vanilla. The description pointed to inconsistency and a lack of complete performances rather than isolated mistakes. He also stated that the issues were not limited to specific players. Put anybody in the uniform and playing the way we're playing, we're probably going to have the same result. The general manager also addressed speculation around immediate roster changes. Treliving stated, "You're not trading your way out of problems." That remark signaled resistance to quick external fixes. Instead, he emphasized that improvement must come from within the existing group. At the same time, he publicly reaffirmed his support for head coach Craig Berube, stating, "Craig didn't become a bad coach overnight," and adding that he had all the faith in the world in him. These statements surfaced as injuries continued to impact the roster. Veteran defenseman Chris Tanev suffered a groin injury described in reports as potentially long-term. Other players dealt with lower body issues, further limiting lineup stability. With performance concerns already present, the injury situation increased attention on roster depth and long-term planning, and that pressure remained fixed on the general manager as the situation continued to develop. The situation intensified as external pressure met internal limitations. Reports published in early January indicated that roster planning had become more complicated due to injuries, particularly on defense. According to coverage summarized by Hockey Patrol, the Maple Leafs were forced to reassess trade deadline planning because of player availability and health concerns. Chris Tanev's groin injury was identified as a key factor, with the absence expected to last a significant period, further reducing defensive depth. At the same time, the general manager maintained his stance against reactive decision-making. His statement, "You're not trading your way out of problems," continued to shape public interpretation of the organization's direction. The message was clear: immediate transactions would not replace internal correction. This position stood even as external observers linked injuries and defensive struggles back to roster construction choices made before the season began. The pressure surrounding these comments increased because of timing. The Maple Leafs were not dealing with isolated losses. They were managing sustained inconsistency. According to the Hockey News, Treliving acknowledged the lack of complete games and noted that the team struggled to maintain structure over full 60-minute performances. These remarks aligned with his earlier description of the team's play as lacking lacking edge and consistency. Despite the criticism, Treliving continued to place emphasis on unity within the organization. His support for head coach Craig Berube remained firm. Treliving rejected any suggestion that coaching instability was the source of the problem.
Yeah, good resilience tonight and character coming back, kept coming back the whole game, But we stuck with it, and I thought guys had good attitude and kept competing and doing good things, and ended up scoring some goals, which we needed.
The Maple Leafs fell behind again and again, yet refused to fade. When the final horn sounded, the scoreboard told one story. The coach told another. Craig Berube stood firm after the win, choosing his words carefully, sending a message that landed hard and changed the conversation heading forward. The Toronto Maple Leafs delivered one of their most turbulent wins of the season with a 6-5 comeback victory against the Winnipeg Jets. The game unfolded with constant momentum swings. Each time, the team responded with a goal. The result marked one of the highest scoring games of the season for the club. Auston Matthews led the charge. The Maple Leafs captain recorded a hat trick and added an assist. His third goal came late in the third period and stood as the game winner. According to the official game recap, Matthews finished the night with 4 points, directly factoring into more than half of Toronto's goals. His performance came after returning to the lineup following a brief injury absence. The game also featured a major goaltending change. Joseph Woll started the game for Toronto, but was pulled after allowing 4 goals. Dennis Hildeby entered in relief and stopped 22 of 23 shots. That change stabilized the game and allowed Toronto to stay within reach as the offense continued to press. Winnipeg contributed heavily to the chaos. Mark Scheifele scored twice and added an assist. Gabriel Velarde and Alexei Afalo also found the net. The Jets held leads at several points and entered the third period still within striking distance. However, Toronto's late push proved decisive. After the game, head coach Craig Berube addressed the media. His tone was firm. He focused on effort, response, and execution rather than mistakes. Good resilience and character coming back tonight, Berube said during his post-game availability. He later added, "I like the guy's attitude. Everyone kept going." Berube referenced how the team stayed engaged despite allowing goals. His comments centered on response rather than breakdown. He did not single out individual errors. Instead, he emphasized collective pushback after each deficit. Toronto improved its recent stretch with the victory, while Winnipeg's losing streak extended. The game ended with celebration on the ice, but the focus quickly shifted to the coach's message, which framed the night as something more than just a comeback win. The message from Craig Berube did not stop at resilience. His remarks also reflected how the Maple Leafs are choosing to play during this stretch of the season. Toronto has leaned into offense, even when games become unstable. Against Winnipeg, that approach was visible from the opening period through the final minutes of regulation. Berube acknowledged the reality of the game's structure. Goals were allowed. Momentum shifted, yet the bench response remained consistent. Players continued to attack. The coach did not frame the win around clean execution. Instead, he described persistence through repeated setbacks. His comments aligned with the numbers on the scoreboard rather than any single moment. Dennis Hildeby's role became more pronounced as the game progressed. After replacing Woll, he faced consistent pressure but allowed only 1 goal. His save percentage for the night finished above .950. The stabilization in net coincided with Toronto's ability to push forward without conceding another lead. Berube's comments did not reference external criticism directly. He spoke through the lens of performance. His emphasis remained on how the team reacted after being tested repeatedly. The coach's language centered on attitude, pushback, and staying engaged. These were observable elements reflected in the flow of the game. The win also came during a period of increased scrutiny around Toronto's consistency. High-scoring games have defined recent results. Against Winnipeg, that pattern continued. The Maple Leafs scored 6 goals for the second time in a week. Over their last 5 games, their goal total reached 25, confirming the offensive surge. Winnipeg's situation added context. The Jets entered the game on a losing streak that extended further with this result. Despite strong individual performances, they were unable to hold multiple leads. Toronto capitalized on each opening created. As the media session concluded, Berub's remarks framed the night around response rather than control. The scoreboard confirmed the comeback. The quotes confirmed the stance. The result stood, but the message carried beyond the final horn.
Circle back on Rasmus Andersson as the Toronto Maple Leafs. We know the Leafs tried to trade for Andersson last year at the deadline, and why I mentioned Toronto is that my understanding is that the Leafs would be one of those teams that perhaps Andersson would consider extending with if in fact a trade would work out between those two teams.
Yeah, and look, the Toronto Maple Leafs right now are in a bit of a predicament. Of course, they would have interest and continued interest in Rasmus Andersson.
Toronto Maple Leafs are quietly active again, and the focus has narrowed. Injuries have changed priorities. Familiar names are back on internal lists. Calgary's situation is being watched closely. No announcement has been made, but multiple teams are circling, and Toronto's involvement has added new pressure to a market that is already tightening fast. Rasmus Andersson has remained one of the most discussed defensemen in NHL trade conversations since last summer. The Calgary Flames blue liner is entering the final year of his contract and has not committed to an extension. That contract status has placed him under constant evaluation as Calgary continues to assess its direction this season. Multiple league reports have stated that if the Flames remain outside the playoff picture, moving Andersson becomes a realistic option rather than risking his departure without return. Interest in Andersson has not been limited to one team. Despite that attention, no transaction has progressed to an advanced stage. Insiders have consistently described discussions as exploratory rather than final. The absence of traction has not eliminated interest. Instead, it has shifted activity behind the scenes. Toronto's involvement has drawn particular focus. According to David Pagnotta, speaking on the Hello Hockey podcast on December 27th, the Maple Leafs are among the teams that have kicked the tires on Andersson. Pagnotta stated, "I still think he's getting moved. We know the usual Dallas and Vegas suspects. We know Toronto's kicked the tires. I could see LA getting back into that discussion." The comment reinforced the idea that Toronto's attention has not faded, even without immediate progress. Toronto's renewed interest aligns with internal circumstances. The Maple Leafs have faced continued pressure on their blue line due to injuries. Chris Tanev was recently ruled out for a significant period with a groin injury. His absence has reduced defensive stability and increased the workload on remaining defenders. Reuters reported that Tanev missed Toronto's most recent game with no clear timeline provided for his return. That development has intensified scrutiny on Toronto's defensive depth. Andersson's profile fits the category Toronto has been monitoring. This season, he has recorded 25 points in 39 games, including 7 goals and 18 assists. He averages over 24 minutes of ice time per game and has contributed 71 block shots and 21 hits. Over his NHL career, Andersson has accumulated 256 points in 575 games. His usage reflects consistent deployment against top competition, a factor teams weigh heavily when evaluating potential acquisitions. Market conditions around Rasmus Andersson have remained controlled rather than aggressive. Reports have indicated that Calgary has not rushed the process and has continued to gather information across the league. The Flames have acknowledged interest, but have not signaled urgency. That posture has kept discussions measured and prevented rapid escalation despite ongoing speculation. Several insiders have pointed to timing as a key factor. Toronto previously explored Andersson at last year's trade deadline, but a deal did not materialize. Pierre LeBrun later reported that the Maple Leafs have since circled back on Andersson as the pool of available top 4 defensemen has narrowed. Following the movement of other high-end defensemen across the league, teams seeking similar profiles have limited alternatives. That contraction has raised Andersson's visibility. Calgary's position remains tied to its broader competitive outlook. The Flames have spent much of the season outside the playoff picture. As that trend continues, league observers have increasingly framed Andersson as one of the most valuable assets Calgary could move. His age, production, and role elevate his market standing compared to short-term depth options. Calgary has not publicly confirmed trade plans, but multiple reports have noted that that front office evaluation is ongoing. Toronto's patience has also been documented. Drager explained that Toronto is monitoring the market while waiting for additional sellers to emerge. With limited supply, teams have shown caution rather than overcommit early. Injury developments have kept the situation fluid. Chris Tanev's absence has placed increased responsibility on Toronto's remaining defensemen. That reality has not been framed as a trigger for immediate action, but it has reinforced the rationale behind continued engagement. Toronto's front office has acknowledged the need for improvement and has maintained communication lines rather than stepping away. At this stage, no formal agreement exists. No finalized framework has been reported. What has been confirmed is sustained interest, repeated evaluation, and continued dialogue. As league insiders have emphasized, the absence of movement does not reflect inactivity. It reflects positioning, timing, and leverage still being tested.
Well, he's coming on a trip, so that's a good sign, but lower body right now. We'll see how he is tomorrow.
The change came without warning. It happened just before puck drop. One of Toronto's top scorers was suddenly not on the ice. The Maple Leafs had already prepared their lines. Then everything shifted. William Nylander was scratched late with a lower body injury. Within minutes, Craig Berube was forced to rebuild the lineup, and the ripple effects started immediately. The Toronto Maple Leafs made a late lineup change after forward William Nylander was ruled out with a lower body injury. The decision came shortly before puck drop. Nylander was initially expected to play. The team later confirmed that he was scratched following a final evaluation. The injury was classified as day-to-day, with no additional medical details released. Head coach Craig Berube addressed the situation after the lineup adjustment. He confirmed the status and timing of the decision. He's day-to-day, Berube said. The statement offered no timetable for Nylander's return. The team did not indicate when the injury occurred or whether it happened during a previous game or practice. The late scratch forced immediate changes. Toronto had already prepared its lines before the decision. Once Nylander was ruled out, the coaching staff had limited time to reorganize the forward group. Players originally assigned to depth roles were moved into larger responsibility. Line combinations were altered minutes before the opening face-off. Late scratches are uncommon in the NHL unless a player is deemed unfit during final checks. Nylander had taken part in earlier preparations before being removed from the lineup. Because the decision came so close to game time, the Maple Leafs did not make a roster recall. Instead, they adjusted internally, reshaping the lineup already dressed for the game. Nylander's absence carried weight. He is a regular top six forward and a consistent contributor to Toronto's offense. He also plays a key role on the power play. With him unavailable, the coaching staff modified special teams unit. Positions were reassigned. Ice time projections changed across multiple lines. Berube kept his public comments brief. He did not describe the severity of the injury. He did not confirm how many games Nylander could miss. The day-to-day label allows flexibility, but it also creates uncertainty for upcoming games. Each day requires a new evaluation, and lineup planning remains unsettled until clearance is given. The sudden change disrupted established chemistry. Nylander has spent significant time with Toronto's primary scoring forwards. Removing him required new combinations without extended practice time. Adjustments were made in real time, under game conditions, as players adapted to new roles with little notice. The situation placed immediate focus on how the Maple Leafs would respond without one of their top offensive pieces, and how long this unexpected shakeup would last. Ice time distribution shifted quickly. Forwards moved into expanded roles. Others saw reduced minutes. The coaching staff monitored performance closely as new combinations were tested under live conditions. These changes affected matchups and altered how Toronto approached offensive zone entries. Berube did not frame the decision as precautionary or long-term. His comments remained limited to the injury designation. "We'll see how he responds," he said. No further clarification was provided. The lack of detail left the situation open-ended, keeping attention on the team's next update. Toronto continues to manage player health closely during a compressed schedule. The absence of a clear return date date for Nylander complicates planning. Practice lines may change from day to day. Game day decisions remain flexible until medical clearance is confirmed. Nylander's role extends beyond scoring. He is a frequent puck carrier and a regular option during transition play. Removing him from the lineup affects zone exits and controlled entries. These elements are typically assigned to experienced forwards, increasing the burden on remaining players. The Maple Leafs did not indicate whether Nylander would travel with the team if games continued on the road. That detail often signals progress, but no confirmation was provided. The team maintained its standard injury protocol, releasing only the designation and leaving further updates to future availability reports. Berub's approach reflected standard league practice. Late scratches are handled quickly. Lines are redrawn. Players are informed. Once the puck drops, changes are locked in. The process leaves little room for gradual adjustment, placing emphasis on readiness and adaptability. As long as Nylander remains sidelined, Toronto's lineup remains fluid. Each game requires fresh evaluation. Roles may continue to shift. Special teams may rotate personnel. These adjustments persist until the forward is cleared to return. The late lineup change altered more than one game. It introduced uncertainty into